Hey everybody, welcome to this month's Banded Roundtable. I'm Ben Hardman, one of the founders of Banded, and I'm joined today by my good friend Carl Lubbe from Curiosity Coach. Carl is not only a good buddy, not only an amazing coach and an incredible leader, he's also in our Banded group here in Atlanta, and so he's a member of Banded. You're not just a client; I don't know how they say it. You're a member as well. So Carl, I'm so glad to have you, man. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you do it.
Well, first of all, Ben, I really love the hype music that you guys had before this. Like,
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
I'm ready to go. And
Run
thanks
through
for
it
having.
all.
That's right. Thanks for having me on. So background, born and raised in South Africa, immigrated to the States ages ago. In my first professional life, I was a touring musician in my 20s. And then through my 30s and now 40s have been a people leader in multiple organizations. And for the last 5 years, I've had my own firm where we do executive coaching and team development, leadership development, all around this idea that powerful people desperately need to get more curious. And so we do a lot of EQ, emotional intelligence training, and soft skill development around this idea of if you want to be a great leader of people, you have to really get good at the art of peopling. And in order to do that, you have to raise your emotional intelligence by asking better questions.
It's great, so important, and I love the work that Carl does. I was at an event last night. We were doing a banded recruiting event here in Atlanta because we've got our third group getting ready to launch here in Atlanta.
Woo!
And as we were talking, one of the guys was introduced, and he said he's known as the CEO whisperer, and I thought of you instantly. No, that's Carl. Carl is the CEO whisperer. That's what Carl does. When a lot of leaders, Carl, hear about soft skills and EQ and those kinds of things, I know that there is a group of leaders out there who are kind of like, yeah, but the bottom line,
Mhm.
right? Those things are great and I value those things, but I really just need the numbers to get better. Why focus on curiosity? Why focus on emotional intelligence? Why focus on those soft skills?
Yeah, what a good question. And, one that most leaders wrestle with all the time because we're being driven right by P&L. It's going, hey, how do we stay open as a nonprofit or a for-profit if the P&L isn't working? And so the thing that I immediately go to is, okay, well, let's talk about it. Supposedly, the world has been run on IQ for millennia, right? And so it's like if I'm smart enough to create a product and if I can get it to market, then I can make money. And even an accountant and a chief financial officer is looking at the numbers, which requires a lot of intelligence, data, IQ. However, what I would say is if you go to any brand specialist, they can run you through the same idea and go, if you were going to value Apple or Nvidia or Nike or any of these massive organizations, it would be about 30% the value is the widget, the pair of shoes, the factory that they own, whatever. 70% of the brand's value is the way it makes somebody feel.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's this idea. And so all of that is the emotional intelligence and the soft skills and the people part of a brand and its value. And, I think very aptly in the age that we're living in, we were having this conversation yesterday about all things artificial intelligence. I believe deeply in the future that there will be companies who are using AI and companies that are out of business. I think it's a non-negotiable moving forward. However, I deeply believe that people are still intrinsic and the main motivator and the whole point. And so our idea at Curiosity around this thought is, you know, IQ is becoming more and more inexpensive. It's getting cheaper by the day. And our ability to relate to another person, what we call peopling, the skill of being a person with other people, is getting more expensive by the day. So as IQ gets cheaper, EQ is getting insanely
Great.
expensive.
Yeah.
And so our ability to attract great talent, our ability to develop great talent, our ability to ideate well, our ability to bring the next great product to market, and to do it in a way that people want to be a part of for longer than 6 months. All of this is the art and the science of peopling. And so it becomes very quick to help somebody adjust their mindset and going, oh, all of that's true. And the way that I typically do it with a CEO or a leader, as I said, every great problem that you've ever had has included a person.
Hmm.
Every great profit or breakthrough that you've ever had has included a person. So, what if we created processes to support people so well that we reduce the problem friction and increase the profit likelihood? And
Yeah.
so, very quickly, then they go, oh, yeah, if you're going to make my life easier around people, I'm all in.
Yeah. Well, and typically the person that's around the problem is me, right? Right? The one common denominator in
Mm.
every problem that I have is that I'm a part of it.
That's right.
And so as you're focusing on people's development skills, you're also developing their own self-awareness. And at
Mhm.
Banded, we often say the one common denominator of every great leader we know is that they're self-aware. They're not always the smartest person in the room, but they know what they can contribute and what they can't. They know what they bring in, and they know how to carry themselves with a non-anxious presence in that room. It's that inwardly sound and others focused leader that we talk about a lot
Mhm.
at Banded. Um, Tell me about your like life story a little bit. What drew you to curiosity? What connected you to that theme and that idea of people management?
Yeah, well, if we're talking about like my actual life story and what brought this thematically up for me, being an 8-year-old when I came to the States, speaking 5 different languages, as a white South African in East Tennessee, I was an overweight kid with a pretty thick accent, and my dad was 6'3" with a beard and walked around with an African gray parrot on his shoulder in a flea market. And my younger brothers are identical twins, blonde hair, blue eyed. So you walk into a flea market on a Saturday morning in Mohawk, Tennessee, you're instantly a curiosity. However, that would be met with different degrees of other people's curiosity. Either you're a freak show to kind of be pointed at or avoided, or people would ask questions like, hey, what's it like to wear clothes? Or, hey, what's it like to have to run after your food? Or what's it like to live in a house and not swing from the trees? Like, so these are not real questions, right? They're moments of like levity, depending on whether you're asking the question or being asked the question. And so in those moments, like many immigrants, I feel like you kind of have two choices. You can, and actually, I guess there's a third choice. So the most popular choices are assimilate at all costs and just become like the place that you have been born into or find yourself in. The other choice is create a little Johannesburg in the middle of, East Tennessee and do not assimilate at any cost. And I think what I did, as I've done with most of my life, is I was like, I wonder if there's a third way. Is there a third choice? Is there a both and? And that's what I did. And what I discovered was like, I'm not looking to lose my South Africanness, but I'm also insanely curious about what does it look like to grow up as an 8-year-old in East Tennessee, in the foothills of the Appalachia. And that's really what predicated this muscle being developed in me from the age of 8 until now I'm 44, is I will walk into almost any room and go, oh, what's interesting here? What have I never considered? And this person in front of me, if it's the checkout person at the local Hardee's, oh, you have a story I've never heard. I'm very interested in it. And it becomes that principle of if in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And I think that became a little bit of my superpower through my teenage years and 20s and 30s and now into my 40s is it was both a product of my nature and then my nurture and then my habits. And so when I found myself in my 30s, having really healthy teams and people gravitating to want to be on my team, and then somebody asked, well, why does this work? Why do people want to do that? I realized I had an unconscious competency of people leadership. And then I started to really go, no, no, but I want that to become conscious. Why does that work? Why does it seem to thrive and flourish? Because I don't think it's me. It's not like some cult of leadership or personality. I think there are probably some principles at play. And actually, I had a friend, years and years ago, when I asked him, hey, Simon Sinek kind of famously has this question of his friends, like, why did you choose me? And then when the friend goes, oh, because you're nice and generous, he's like, no, lots of other people are nice and generous. Why me? Like, what is it about me that makes you want to be friends with me? And so I took and asked the same question of a friend of mine. He's like, you're the most curious person I've ever met. He's like, other people are curious. Nobody's ever been curious about me and made me feel seen and heard the way that you have. And he's like, that's your superpower. And it wasn't until that moment I was like, oh, thematically, this is the thing I enjoy the most. And so then it was very easy to build my consultancy around this concept of the world doesn't need simple answers, it needs better questions.
Yeah, so good. So good. And I think there's such a power in actually seeing people, especially as a leader.
Mm.
Our temptation as a leader is I got to jump to the next thing. I got to hurry to the next task. I've got to knock out this task list. But when we can actually enter in, see someone, be interested in them, interested in their story, want them to get the win, ask good questions, something beautiful begins to happen in our relationships, which is hugely significant, I think, for any leader that's listening of are you taking the time to walk the floor, right? And just stop at the water cooler and ask people about their weekend and remember about what happened last week with them and talk to them about their sick mom or,
Mhm.
just taking the time to be present to your people is so significant and will raise your relational capital to such a high level if you're able to do that well.
Yeah.
And Carl, you've exhibited all of those things with me of being curious about my life, being interested in my life. And I've been with you in, a number of happy hours, different spots where we're out hanging out and, you're asking just incredible questions. So help me out with asking better questions. So give us an example of how do we ask a better question?
Yeah. So what I would say is in order to know a better question, we have to ask ourselves, like, well, what are some lazy and unintentionally bad questions, right? So let's take your happy hour example. If you're in a new space or you're in a networking event or you're in a new job or you're at a spiritual gathering and they say, hey, turn and greet your neighbor. One of the first things we'll say is like, oh, where are you from? And with, absolutely zero disparaging remarks about Ben, if I asked you, Ben, where are you from? What would you tell me?
Roswell, Georgia,
Okay. And originally, where would you tell me? Because we live in the same place now,
around
right?
Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah.
Around Cincinnati, Ohio. Now,
Really, it's Dayton, but I say
Dayton,
Cincinnati because
right?
Cincinnati's a little more fun than Dayton.
Sure. And here's the thing, because you're from there, you know that, right?
Yeah,
But because I'm not there, unless it holds some interest to me, Dayton versus Cincinnati versus Columbus versus Akron versus any other town that I might be able to name in Ohio doesn't
I bet that's all
particularly,
of them. Maybe
yeah,
Cleveland.
yeah. And to this point, though, it hasn't dropped any sort of anchor, right? I
Yeah.
will not, unless you and I have deep relationship, remember that after the first 4 seconds of you saying it.
Hmm.
And so we're asking questions that are accidentally assumptions in disguise.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a question. I didn't really want to know that thing because it's not really interesting to me. And
Hmm.
so we'll ask people, hey, where are you from? And unless it's, let's switch the thing. Just because I'm an outsider, if I tell somebody Johannesburg, then it's like, oh, that's
That
so
becomes
other to
interesting.
be
Yeah.
interesting, right?
Dayton, Ohio does not become
It,
interesting to
it,
anyone.
yeah, except maybe your mom. And she's like, oh, I love that
I
you're
don't even know that
there.
she's that interested.
So if that's a bad question, let's ask the reason why it's a bad question, because that could be immediately offensive. Well, why is Dayton, Ohio the wrong? And it's like, it's not the wrong answer. It's not yet an interesting enough question. So if we're going, okay, well, it's a bad question because maybe it's not memorable, it doesn't create an anchor, it's not really something outside of my affection for you that I really care about. So then it behooves the next one, which is, well, then what's a better question?
Yeah.
And a better question, if I can pose this now, is you're from Dayton, right? That's what we said?
Between
Yeah.
Dayton and Cincinnati. Yeah.
Okay. Ben, if I could ask, and I genuinely want to know, not rhetorically, what's your favorite thing or memory about where you're from?
Mm.
Growing up there, what was the thing that you're like, man, Carl, if I could share this with you, or if you could have come to this place or done this thing with me, this is the memory that comes to mind
Yeah.
of me growing up in
Well, I
Dayton.
think we've talked about this, Carl, because you've been to my my happy place.
Yeah.
So growing up in Ohio. There's not a lot of great things in Ohio.
Mhm.
There is, but the one thing that is great consistently is the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah.
And so every kid in Ohio is a huge Buckeye fan, and you're born into it. I came by it honestly, like,
Mhm.
and so my father every year from the time I was 6 years old until I was 25 took me to one football game a year,
Mm.
and those are my favorite moments with my father. We would drive down to Columbus or up to Columbus early. We would tailgate, and I saw some things that I probably shouldn't have seen when I was six. And so dad would help me interpret life. We would go to the skull session, which is where the band would come and rehearse in the arena across the street from the stadium. We would watch the team enter into that room. The band would play. Then we'd go into the stadium. The way they enter into the stadium, as you know, Carl, because you've been to a game,
I
and
do.
we're going to go to another game together because we're going to get that Georgia Bulldog out of you. Uh, as you go into a game, the drums start to sound in the tunnel,
Mhm.
and then the band comes out on the field, and it's like a goosebumps moment every time. And I that will forever be one of my favorite memories of being with my dad.
Hmm. Man.
It's very different than
Dayton.
Cincinnati.
Right. Yeah, very different than a numerical zip code, right? Because in this moment now, we've asked a question, and here's the mark of a bad question is that it can be answered monosyllabically or yes or no.
Hmm.
Where are you from? Dayton. Very short. Hey, you're from Ohio, right? Yeah. Oh, you're from Illinois? No. Like these are marks of bad, lazy, unintentional questions.
Well, and I think what we're doing in our head oftentimes is like trying to figure out some connection to that place, right? So if somebody's like, I'm in Wisconsin, I would say, oh, I had a client there once in Madison, and
Right.
I've been to Madison before.
So what's the other problem there? They
Yeah.
don't care about that experience either.
Yeah, that in my
I know.
experience there isn't interesting either.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're
So
both telling each other uninteresting things.
yeah. And
Yeah.
this is where people go, oh, I hate small talk or I hate networking events. It's because we're asking the wrong questions. I hate onboarding a new employee or being in unfamiliar places. It's because we're not tethered to or engineered or educated to ask robust questions in small spaces.
Yeah.
But we can, like, we can ask, be like, oh, I could immediately, even of a stranger, if we're meeting it for the first time, oh, Ben, hey, it's Carl, it's nice to meet you. Yeah, Ben. So I'm curious, Ben, you said you're from where? Dayton. Oh, and immediately I'm asking, what was your favorite thing about growing up there? So for some people, they can't be like, hey, what was your favorite thing about where you grew up? It might feel a little presumptive, but it's
Mhm.
almost like a left hand, right hand handshake of going, I know that I'm just using the first instinct to make sure it's not socially awkward to immediately get to something that will actually tether me in bed. And so
Yeah, that's
if
good.
yes or no questions are the mark of a bad question, the mark of a better question, and maybe even a great question is, I feel more connected to this person. And
Mhm.
I'm connected to a memory of theirs that I will never forget. Because to your point, I went with a friend of mine, Tyler Markham, to an Ohio State game last year. And I remember my first thought was, I've got to see the band come in because I remember Ben telling me about the band. And I've got to videotape it so that I show him I'm having the same experience that
Yeah.
you hasn't had as an 8-year old. I'm having it as a 43-year-old because you were kind enough to share that thing.
You just had better seats than I did.
Well, that was because they were playing nobody. So, it
Yeah,
was
that is
easier to get
true.
closer.
That is true.
Hmm.
That's good. So give me an example of how this plays out as a leader in your company. How does thinking through better questions help me as a CEO? I can understand like relationally, this helps me. I can understand like I'm pretty bad. I'm an introvert, so I'm pretty bad at happy hours. That's why I like going to things with you. It's like I have a wingman, right?
Have you
But
met
like
Ben?
if
My,
as a CEO, as a leader of a company, I show up at my desk on a Thursday morning. What's a better question for me to be asking?
Yeah, so we've got 7 tools around this. And so the question really depends on the problem that you're trying to fix. If you're trying to ask, like, figure out why somebody just isn't showing up with enthusiasm anymore, that's because they don't have enough purpose alignment in the thing. The work doesn't feel like it matters. And actually, it may be helpful just in this moment, Ben. Let me show these kind of seven things
Yeah.
because it'll be easier for somebody to follow along with visually here, if I may. So if we see this coming up here, this is, our tools. We call them the seven shapes to build a happy company. Because two things are true. Very few people will remember the words that I say today on the podcast, but they can remember a pentagon or a triangle or a circle or a square. So we've intentionally, in my consultancy, built everything around shapes and numbers. Because my brother, who's a functional neurologist, said that children learn shapes and numbers faster than language. So we've leaned into that and be like, how do we learn this? So the first thing you see there is this pentagon, and it's around purpose alignment. So if people aren't showing up well, it's because they don't know why the job matters. And I'll explain one of these here in a second, but just to give a quick overview. The second thing is, well, if people aren't performing the way that you want them to, if it seems like, oh, aren't meeting deadlines or aren't, hitting the mark, well, it's probably because they don't actually have real clarity on what it is that they need to do next, which then immediately leads to the third thing, which is conflict. Well, I'm upset, you're upset, we're not getting what we need from each other. Well, how do we get on the same page is that question. And then typically we're playing this corporate version of the telephone game where I say something and I thought you heard it, but you didn't hear it. And so now we need a tool that helps to clarify our language and ask, well, does it actually make sense? And then the part that comes after that is we're onboarding people and we're building their skills. And now we're in this people development square. And we're genuinely asking, well, where are we in the training process of this thing? And then you have leadership skills, which is, well, what do you need from me? What do I need from you? It's attention, intention, and commitment to the problem, the solution, and the deadline. And then finally, it's going, well, if we know these things, how are we being innovative? And how are we not pitching each other, but actually doing ideation sessions in which we're moving things forward? And we have to know, well, if we're implementing something new or ideating against something new, how are we knowing what the next steps are? So let me ask this question to your question, Ben. If you look at these seven, and I could tell you, like, not anecdotally, but driven by the data, what most clients are asking for in the first couple of tools. But what would you imagine as all the leaders that you're hitting? What would you say is, maybe a current concern or a most popular concern that they're having?
Yeah, I think conflict resolution.
Okay, great.
I think that relates to everybody
Yeah,
all the time. Like,
yeah.
if you're going to lead, you're going to deal with conflict.
Absolutely. So typically, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, you have conflict avoidance, and this is neurologically, evolutionarily built in because we have a fight, flight, or freeze response that you have zero control over. This is in the amygdala, the back part of your brain. It's to keep you alive. And what we need to do by engineering question is we're going to move from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the CEO, the thinker, and go, hey, how do we elevate the discourse? Because typically where there's conflict, if I'm in a position of power, well, I can just fight. You're gonna do what I told you, or what I told you to do. I'm gonna make statements. I'm gonna make declarations. If you're in a position where you're not in power, you're gonna flight. I'm gonna run away from this. I'm gonna hide somewhere for long enough until I can find a new position or a new leader, or I'm just gonna freeze and just be like, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I'm just terrified by you. So I'll be in a possum position until you just go away because you're frustrated. So if we're the leader in that situation, around our circle tool, we have this idea of in any conflict, the process, not the person, is the problem, which beautifully means that the process, not the person, is the solution. And so when I feel conflict with somebody I'm leading, it means something in our process is broken in our alignment to the goal and the thing that we're doing. And so I should get curious about that. And the person who's closest to that is the person that I'm in conflict with. We're in this dialogue that feels like it's a monologue because we're not, conversing. So then the question becomes, how do we get on the same page? How do we get shoulder to shoulder? And we have three questions for this. We call it the three A's of a great conversation. And at the beginning, the three A's of a hard conversation or a broken process, and eventually it will help us. But the three A's are
And
this.
just for the record,
Yeah.
you've taught me this, and I think about it all the time now.
Oh, oh, good. Well, good. I'm glad that it's helpful. Mostly people are able to think about it because I try and simplify it because I'm always asking, would the 8-year-old version of me be able to use this? And luckily, I've got a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they use this all the time. So, like you said, it's Luckily, it's simplified but powerful enough to be helpful. And so the three A's are this: we need to acknowledge the difficulty, we need to affirm their effort, and we need to ask their win. So again, what we're trying to do in a great conversation is we want to acknowledge their difficulty, affirm their effort, and ask their win. And by the way, when you're in a position of power, when you're leading people, the first thing you have to do is to come and serve them, is to reduce any of that hierarchical weight and just go, oh, if I'm going to get what I need, I have to be able to get them what they need. And then now the dialogue can begin. And so curiosity is the quickest way to that. And by the way, if you're angry in the conflict, it is neurologically impossible to be curious and angry at the same time.
Hmm.
So let's reverse that. It's neurologically impossible to be angry and curious at the same time. So if I find myself elevated, anxious, angry, if I can engineer a new question, it moves from the fight, flight, or freeze in the back of my brain in the amygdala now into the CEO. And so now I can ask a new question and be in a new space. And so around those three things, what I would do is I would want to acknowledge their difficulty.
Mhm.
Hey, I see that this thing's pretty hard right now, either in the tension between us or the thing you're trying to do. It feels heavy, it feels difficult. And here's the magic of this question. Hey, what about this is hard that I may or may not understand? All of a sudden, you're giving this other person who hypothetically you have power over, you're giving them all the power of the conversation. They're now in the driver's seat. But guess what? You're navigating. All the real power is in the navigator, the person sitting, in the passenger seat. But it is now the idea of power is handed over to. And then the second thing, when you hear that and you unpack and ask the next question, let them, speak through that. And by the way, you said this perfectly earlier. Like we're moving so quickly that a lot of times we're not creating space for this. When we don't create space to ask these questions, what you think would have cost you 30 minutes will cost you 3 years. What you think might cost you $1,000 in productivity will cost you $100,000 in outcome. We cannot afford not to create these pauses. And so we use this phrase with leaders all the time. All the power is in the pause. And I learned this actually recently. Ben already knows I'm a terrible tennis player, even worse than I am as a pickleball player, which is hard to imagine. But recently, a friend of mine was giving me a lesson, and in the serve, he was teaching me everything happens in that moment where you just stop. When the ball's at the apex and before it starts to come down, you've paused your entire swing and all your power comes forward. Because he was like, you're going so fast that the ball is never where you need to be. That's why you're hitting it out. And after he showed me this and I paused, I was like, I didn't know that I could hit the ball that hard in the service box ever. And it all happened. All the power was in the pause.
That's good. Same is
And
true for golf. Same is true for fly fishing.
yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that 10 and 2 in fly fishing. I wouldn't know about golf because I can't hit it straight to save my life. But I'm sure the principle is the same. And so in this idea, if we can pause long enough to acknowledge their difficulty, if we can pause and go, man, what have they been trying? And remember, we praise effort, input. We're not praising output because this is where people get confused and they go, well, Carl, I have to lie to them and tell them they're doing their good job. No, no, no. Praise effort, the input that they're making, not the outcomes that we're getting. And then lastly, we want to, again, with data, because the first two things are all EQ, emotional intelligence. Now, the last question is, hey, what's the win for you? Like, and try and get to a number and a deadline. I did this even yesterday in a group with Banded with Ben and some of these other really gifted leaders. They would go, I don't know what the number is. And it's like, well, we can pause long enough to find the number and the deadline in your win. Because if we don't, it's a moving target. You don't know what it is that you're trying to get. And so now you're frustrated internally because you haven't clarified it to yourself. How in the world could you clarify it to somebody leading you or holding you accountable?
It's good. So good. What do you think what should the rhythm be for a leader with their direct reports? Like how often should they meet? How often should these conversations be having? Because I think there's a temptation when people hear you talking about these things that like I don't have time for all of this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm already doing everything else that I have to do as a CEO. I don't know that I have time to be curious every day. How would you encourage that busy leader to start practicing some of these particulars, and what would be that rhythm of connecting with your direct reports?
It's such a good question. And this is, where you kind of see the merger of art and science. It's not an exact science, but it's
Yeah.
not, fuzzy art either. It's both. And I think the cadence or the rhythm of this will depend on the conversations you're having with the people you lead. Some people who are, in your organization are going to need more time. And I would say, the more frustrated you are with the outputs, the more regularly you need to adjust the inputs.
Yeah. Good.
And you have to be really careful here, right? Because if you have somebody who's really gifted and their outputs are like 9 out of 10 really consistently, the temptation is, oh, well, I don't need to help Sarah. She's
Yeah.
amazing. I don't ever need to check on her. And this is the point at which you go, hey, Sarah, like, what do you need from me? Hey, Jessica, hey, David, like, hey, Terrence, like, what is the thing in this season? Because you're crushing, so I don't want to get in the way of whatever you're doing, but how much time would you like with me? And then I don't know that you can over-index on meeting people when the meeting is great. So, what was the most popular meme on the planet coming out of COVID was this meeting could have been an
Email.
email. And I don't think there could be a less true statement and a more true statement. And what I mean by this is no great meeting can ever be an email, and every bad meeting can always be an email. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we don't have something of substance, yeah, let it be an email and here's the task list and punch list, and that's fine. But I regularly with my teams have something called a 7-minute sync, where it's like I'm going to set a timer on my phone and I'm going to get through the things that I might need or think you might need from me in 7 minutes. And if you need to go longer than that, you're welcome to the time. But I'm promising you, I'm going to value your time so deeply that I'm going to come with one problem, two possible solutions, and one deadline within this 7 minutes because I want to honor and value your time as I serve you. And
So
so when we do that, it guarantees a great meeting that could not have been an email.
yeah, so helpful. So let's just imagine there's a leader out there who's saying, "Okay, I want to jump in. I want to start applying curiosity to the work that I'm doing." What shifts would they begin seeing within the first 90 days just from some of these simple curiosity practices and applying some of your tools?
Yeah, I mean, my nickname at our company is the anxiety assassin. And so I've been doing this for 5 years, and we have 100% return on this promise is the anxiety in the company will go down dramatically in the first 90 days.
Yeah.
Because ambiguity creates anxiety and clarity creates connection.
Hmm.
And our job within helping people ask better questions and using these very finite, practical, measurable tools is we're going to just create a metric ton of clarity across the organization. And what you find is between frontline, middle management, executive, and C-suite, there's just a metric ton of ambiguity in every one of those layers and then between all of them. And
Yes.
so within those first 90 days, you will see people show up differently. They'll be more excited for the work. The work will become more efficient and they will learn to start asking bigger, better questions that will push the company forward.
Yeah. Let me ask you a personal question, Carl. Just like what excites you most about your coaching? When you're meeting with a CEO or you're coaching a team or you're out in the field at their site, what are the things that you see happen that just you're like, okay, this is what I was made to do. This is
Mm,
why I love the work that I do.
mm. It's a fantastic question with a very strange answer.
Okay.
Um, I don't care about the bottom line.
Hmm.
Money has never been all that interesting to me. And so very oddly, I help companies generate a lot of money.
Hmm.
Um, but I use that just as a method to get in there. Like, hey, I'm going to make you an extra 6, 7, 8 figures this, quarter, this year. Um, Mostly because the thing I get excited about is I'll be on the job site and somebody will tap me on the shoulder before we walk into a session, be like, "Hey, you got 3 minutes?" Be like, "Yeah, yeah." And they'll be like, "Hey, I want to tell you, I used one of the tools with my kids the other day,
Mm.
and we haven't had a conversation that good in 3 years."
Yeah.
Or, hey, you showed me the conflict thing and you joked about, in every relationship when it comes to the dishwasher, one person in the relationship is a Swiss engineer and the other one is a methed out raccoon. I discovered with the tool, I'm the methed out raccoon, and I used it and we tried it differently. And it was the first time in 10 years that me and my wife haven't had an argument at the end of cleaning up after dinner. And my goal with the company, and this is why it's the tagline, we say we teach people how to people.
Mm-hmm.
The work is really important. I want people not to hate their work. I want them not to have to spend 40 or 50 hours on something that they despise or are worried about or it creates a metric ton of anxiety. But really, the tools are kind of a Trojan horse into raising people's emotional intelligence everywhere. And so the thing that gets me most excited is when they start to see, oh, I'm applying this with, Jonathan at my team, and it's reduced our anxiety and improved our one-on-one and the 90-day reviews. But I also weirdly start seeing it everywhere, kind of like you said, like, oh, I see the three A's. It's kind of like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff I get most excited about is actually impacting people's emotional intelligence and their ability to be curious and their ability to enjoy themselves and others at a much higher, easier rate. That's what gets me
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. And the one thing I know about the work that you do is you have fun with it too,
Yeah.
right? The people that you're working with are having a good time
Yeah.
as they're working through
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Carl, you doing a really amazing job of in our context with Banded. You are an amazing leader who's incredibly successful and doing amazing things, but you're also a follower of Jesus.
Hmm.
And I feel like you do an incredible job of you're not faith forward with your organization, but you're faith valued in your organization. Tell me a little bit about how you manage that
Mhm.
and how your faith plays into your coaching and kind of the secret sauce in the work that you do.
Yeah. I mean, everything that I'm doing here based on curiosity is based on the simple idea that for almost anybody who's ever lived on the planet, Jesus is a very interesting figure, right? Regardless of whether he's savior or madman, he's interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things to me, again, if you look at the Gospels as just some old text or you look at as Holy Scripture for yourself, in the four Gospels, Jesus asked over 300 questions and he answered less than 20.
Mhm.
So the person who theoretically has all knowledge that has ever existed as a divine being walking amongst us mere mortals is still insanely curious. To ask 300 questions versus answering 20, that ratio is shocking. And so this has informed a lot of my own, like, oh, well, if this is the most interesting person to ever walk the planet, him and the Dos Equis guy, well, then surely I can take something from both of them. From Jesus, I'll take curiosity, and from the Dos Equis guy, live an interesting life. And so what I've brought then to my work is this idea that, okay, if curiosity is that big a part of the life of Jesus, how do we then kind of formalize it in these spaces? And I had a mentor about 10 years ago tell me he believed that people would meet Jesus in the 21st century first as a healer before they met him as a savior.
It's good.
And what I've been very fortunate in my spiritual development, in my mental development, in my professional development is I have never had to carry the burden of anxiety the way most of my contemporaries do.
Mhm.
And I think that's a weird unearned superpower that then I got to go, okay, well, why is that? And how could I come as a healer to other people's anxieties professionally?
Yeah.
And so I realized, oh, clarity is the antidote to that. Curiosity is the antidote to most of this anxiety. And so what I find is that the teachings of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the relationship in my spiritual walk is this underpinning for me personally, privately. And then what I hope people experience is the fruit of that. And what has happened in the last 5 years is people, both believers and non, will ask me, why does this stuff work? Where did you come up? I didn't go to Wharton. This isn't given to me by somebody else. This is an accumulation of, 44 years of living on the planet going, this works in my marriage, this works in my parenting, this works in my professional life. And when things don't work in any one of those three places, it's because one of these things probably broke down. I had a lack of curiosity, a lack of presence to the person in front of me. And so I'm very interested in people tasting the peaceful fruit and the hopefulness and the reduction in anxiety, and then them getting curious and be like, wait, why? As opposed to me going, hey, by the way, this is the secret sauce. And if you believe that, you should come and experience it. I think it's much more whimsical and mystical and honestly fun for somebody to experience all of the goodness of this stuff, of the reduction in anxiety, the increase in purpose, the removal of conflict, the development of skills, all of these really fun things to experience as a human. And then I had a client of mine a few years ago, a software developer, owned a company out of Toronto before he sold. He said, "Why does this always work?" He's like, "Every time we use one of these shapes, it feels so small and easy and simple, and it feels like it shouldn't be able to move that, like things that are that complicated and heavy. Like we're having a screaming match a week ago, and now we try one of the tools, and we're not best friends yet, but we're definitely not screaming at each other." He's like, "Why does that work?" And I basically said, "Hey man, it's too weird. You don't want to know." And and after a couple of sessions, he's like, "No, man, I've paid a large amount of money, and it's not, a business school, and it's not a methodology from someplace else. Where does this work?" And I was like, "It's the spiritual principle of curiosity that I have learned and gleaned from the life of Jesus."
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, you're right. That's weird." And I was like, "I told you."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Hey, can we talk some more about that?" And I was
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. I love it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the question that Jesus asked the most is, "What do you want?" And I think I've always taught, and I think this is where curiosity and why I'm so drawn to the work that you do,
Mhm.
is that becomes the starting point for all of our discipleship, is asking that question of what do you want? And then what Jesus does so beautifully is he either tells us why what we want isn't what we actually need and disciples us into what our wants should be, right? He changes our desires and makes our desires around what his desires are. Or he gives us what we want and says, yeah, that's a good thing. Be healed, right?
Yeah.
There's such a beautiful picture of that all throughout the Gospels. It is fun to just read the Gospels and pay attention to the questions that Jesus has. One of the tasks that I was given is I have a ministry background. And so one of the tasks I was given by one of the churches I worked for was to just read, I think it was 6 to 10 verses a day from the Gospels.
Mhm.
And then just simply ask the question, am I being like Jesus every day?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
what do I see Jesus doing here
Mhm.
that I'm not doing in my daily life? And there's something really beautiful about just looking at the life of Jesus, and there's so much power in that. So
Mhm.
I love that, Carl, and you model that so well.
Thank you.
Give me an example. No, you are a banded member, and you're in the banded group with me here in Atlanta, one of the first groups that we launched. So you've been in it for a while. Would you just tell the people why you love banded, why you connect with the work that we're doing, why those monthly sessions are worth showing up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest reason is loneliness. And the Surgeon General of the United States has come out boldly and said, "Hey, the greatest epidemic facing our healthcare in the United States is actually loneliness. Like it's apparently worse. People being lonely has a more adverse effect on our physical health than smoking 13 cigarettes a day." And so what I noticed in my world was I will get on a plane and go to San Diego or New York or Chicago to be with a client. And I didn't have like a local place where I could hop in the car and within 15 minutes be around people who I could pour into, but who were also interested in being like, "Hey, what's going on in your world?" And so when you said, "Hey, we've got this peer group thing," and I was like, "Well, I love Ben. I'm going to come support him. Yeah, I'm all in." But it wasn't until I got in the room and be like, oh, I need this. I need a space where people are, grappling with hard things and are willing to be vulnerable and, leading small, mid-sized, large companies are in various stages of life where young kids, kids in high school, empty nesters and everything in between. And so you're getting this really fantastic cross section of other leaders who are, because of the way that you've built Banded, are like invited into this place where it's not like, "Oh my gosh, we're 19 sessions into therapy and nothing is happening and I feel awkward because this person's disclosing things that I would never be comfortable in an open room hearing, never mind sharing." Um, but there is the level of vulnerability to go, "Oh, I can meet you there." And it feels very organic and very natural. It feels unforced. And because of, I guess, my wiring as a consultant, as a coach, it also feels like there's momentum. It's not just, "Hey, would you just share Oh, that sucks. Best of luck with that. It's like, no, now there's a collective brain trust that's going, hey, me too, or hey, in the past I dealt with that. Have you thought about this? Or hey, I've never dealt with that, but have you considered this from a different perspective? And so it's getting literally a board of advisors every time you get together to be like, hey, what are you seeing that I don't see?
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the guys from our group shared last night at the
Mm.
happy hour, and I was just thrilled at his answer. But he just said, we have become so close in such a short amount of time that I am actively rooting for every member of our
Oh,
group.
I love that.
And I want them to win so badly. And because of that, I'm willing to open up my Rolodex and give, relationships. I'm willing to give wisdom. I'm willing to give time
Mhm.
because once you get to know a group of people and you have that shared faith and
Mhm.
a shared ambition and a shared experience, there's real transformation that can come out
Oh,
of
yeah.
that. And so he was saying, like, I'm excited at 5 years from now to see where everybody is and how everybody grows. And then to look around the room and say, there's a huge portion of my growth that is connected to the wisdom that I got from this guy in this one meeting and this idea that I took that elevated my company in a really significant way. So it's so fun for me to see every week just different breakthroughs every month, hear the different challenges that people bring to their focus session, and hear some of the breakthrough that happens. So thanks for being a part of that. You're a
Oh,
huge
thanks
part
for
of
that.
that group.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a buddy of mine. You're a great friend, and I'm so grateful for your friendship. Tell everybody out there how they connect with you. If because I'll just say this: if you're looking for a leadership coach, I don't think there's anybody else in the business that's better than Carl. So
Mhm.
he is the person that I go to when I'm stuck. He is the person that I call. Luckily, I'm good friends with him, so I don't pay as much. But he's worth every penny of what he's charging and is an amazing leader. So, how do people connect with you, Carl?
First of all, very kind of you. It's lovely to be in friendship and relationship with somebody like you who's so intentional around these things. It means the world. And to get in touch with me, very simple. Just to go to getmorecurious.com because our tagline is, or our hope is, we're, trying to help powerful people get more curious. And everybody's powerful because you lead yourself. You can, lead up, sideways, and down. And so we want to help you get more curious because everything you want is on the other side of a better question. And so if you go to getmorecurious.com, the 5 things we do are we can do lunch and learns or a 1 day retreat. We do 8 week cohorts, kind of like a boot camp for emotional intelligence. And then we do one-on-one executive coaching. And then we've even created an online tool where you can learn everything that we're teaching anytime you want, kind of through a masterclass format.
So good.
Yeah.
Reach out to Carl, getmorecurious.com. If you're interested in Banded, we're growing
You should
rapidly.
be. Go
We
join.
just launched 3 new groups, one in Denver, one in Northern Colorado, and one in Orange County last week. And then in the past 2 weeks, we've started recruiting for a group in Raleigh, a group in Dallas, another group in Atlanta, and a group in Birmingham. And so if you're in any of those cities and are interested in Banded, let us know. We're doing an amazing fly fishing trip out to Montana, October 20th through the 24th. I promise you, it is the best rest that you will get in a long time. It is world-class hospitality, an amazing trip. We've got 6 spots left for that. And so if anybody out there is listening,
By the way, did I tell you what happened on Monday when I was at Will Guidara's conference? They gave a shout out to Refuge, the
yeah, they were
that you're
there.
talking
Yeah,
about.
Chase and Brian were there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got to meet Brian, but it was amazing in this room of, 2,500 of the best leaders on maybe on the planet. They were talking about if you haven't gone to Refuge, you need to go. So if Ben's
Come
got
on.
6 spots left and you're hearing this,
Yeah.
take this as your invitation to go to the place where Will Guidara and Tony Hale, the actor, was talking about how great it was. I mean, these are like big time people. They have a choice to go anywhere on the planet and they go to this place, and you should too.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Yeah.
Yeah.
October 20th through the 24th. So reach out to us, joinbanded.com if you're interested in all that stuff. Thanks for joining us today, guys. We appreciate you. Have a good week.
Cheers.